So it seems that Games Workshop have decided to call it a year in August for the 40k Codex releases, stating that the next ones that we can expect are in 2025. Let's talk about what that means for the overall timescale of 10th edition and the Codex is still to come, and all the releases that we know about over the next 4 months or so, where admittedly it's looking quieter, but there's still a good 4 or 5 potential 40k releases in that time. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where in this video I wanted to talk a little bit more about Games Workshop's 40k roadmap, and for this one talk about the pace of Codex rollout, how it's looking versus previous editions, and also just take a look at the gap until Christmas and see just how empty that is, and all the stuff that we know that's coming so far for it. As I'm sure most of you are well aware at the moment, the reaction to the 40k roadmap teaser really wasn't great when they did that preview show on Wednesday to Thursday. They did kind of have some bad news to impart, if the schedule was that we weren't going to be getting any more big 40k releases for a little while at least. Though to be honest, for the news and things that they had to convey, I feel like they perhaps did a surprisingly good job of communicating in a way that was going to frustrate and irritate people. It's just a bit grating with the amount of backpatting they did for the Blood Angels release and the things in 2024. Then just kind of casually dropping in no more codexes till 2025, and obviously as their Games Workshop they can't really say anything bad about that. Even if it was seen as kind of bad news from the 40k community, I think we were generally expecting like 1 or 2 more filler codexes before Christmas in 2025. Probably nothing spectacular, just with a small character release or something like that, as they had just announced the Blood Angels. Just feels like when the announcement of news is that there's going to be good stuff but it's only in 2025, they probably didn't need to preview it at this stage. And if they wanted to communicate that nothing was coming for a good few months, maybe it could have just been a Warhammer community post. Definitely didn't help they didn't show the picture of the roadmap on their reveal stream. They didn't even give any fun teasers or pictures of new model reveals. Even just something like an individual new Kriegsman could have been kind of fun, even if it gave very little clue as to what else was coming. In any case, for what was communicated is that there'll be a solid gap between the codexes. The Blood Angels launch box went for pre-order on the 24th of August, so boxes usually get shipped out around about 2 weeks later. Even at that stage though, in Games Workshop's minds, the codex won't be fully released. That only actually happens when the book goes on sale individually alongside other new kits like the Sanguinary Guard and stuff. So by their schedule, that's kind of one that's still to come, I guess, in autumn sometime. Otherwise, the roadmap showed that Astra Militarum, Eldari and Imperial Knights are coming in early 2025, and I might try and do a bit of a speculation and wishlist kind of video for those as its own topic, but I mainly wanted to focus on the Codex rollout pace so far, as it basically seems that we're about halfway through 10th edition. We've got 13 codexes that have come out, including Blood Angels so far, and that is kind of surprising given that they're not coming out with any more, given that there's 14 codexes left to come, more than half of them. And by the time it's 2025, 10th edition will be more than half done. They tend to front load codexes if anything, so more armies have got more chance to play with their rules throughout the whole edition. With that in mind, let's talk about the codexes they've got left, the pace that they're going to have to keep up, and all the things that we know are in the gap between now and Christmas. Firstly, as a quick aside, I just thought I'd talk about the sponsor of this video, and that's Kiwi, a New Zealand-based company that makes some custom gaming aids for playing Warhammer 40k. Their main offering is this battle box, the idea being it's a sort of storage and in-game sort of solution where you've got scoring trackers for dials on the side of it, places to put secondary objective cards, storage for dice and tokens and things. It's just generally aimed to keep scoring and gameplay aids nice, neat and tidy in their own box, as opposed to having them all separate in your bag and needing other things to track points on. They're basically launching a Kickstarter for an FDM 3D printed version of their battle box, the idea being that you can stack different layers which click into place, and different players can choose different ones as to their gameplay needs. I'll leave a link to the Kickstarter, which has already been very well funded, down in the video description, and I'll cycle back to talk about a few more of the features at the end of the video. In any case, a big thanks for sponsoring this one. In any case, jumping back into the Codex release schedule, for Codexes Left in 10th edition, Games Workshop really seemed to have started with the majority of the most widely played armies. I feel like for every major faction that wasn't getting a whole release wave to themselves, they decided to release them early. So that's why we've had very popular factions like Orcs, Chaos, Space Marines and Necrons all done pretty early. It felt like of the truly massively popular factions in 40k, the only one that they hadn't done that early was Imperial Guard. And as kind of suspected, it was done because they're getting a release wave. They confirmed they've got a wave of Deathcore of Krieg coming for them now. As mentioned, we know the Blood Angels book is kind of half out. It's had its launch box, though it still needs its full release with all the kits, and Deathwatch got folded into Agents of the Imperium, so otherwise there's 14 left. Black Templars and Space Wolves, Grey Knights, who are confirmed to get a Codex sometime 2025, Guard Eldari and Imperial Knights, all coming early, then Chaos Knights, all the Deity Chaos Legions, so all 4 of them including Emperor's Children, which Games Workshop near enough confirmed are coming given that they took them out of the Chaos Space Marine Codex. Chaos Demons if they do get one and don't wind up getting split up into Deity Legions, and then besides the Eldari just Drukhari and Leagues of Votann left to come. Most of the Chaos factions do seem to be kind of weirdly late this edition besides the core Chaos Space Marines, sounding like they're going to be dropping kind of mid-2025 by Games Workshop's teaser. That means it sounds like we're getting either 13 or 14 different books still to release, and I guess it's not impossible that Games Workshop could surprise us with yet another new faction if they wanted to. I'd guess something like Vashtor related and Dark Mechanicum might be the single most likely if it had to say something out there, though still I'd say that's probably an outside chance as opposed to a very likely bet like the Emperor's Children. Basically, to cram that all into 2025 though, it would have to be pretty hectic on the Codex release schedule. We kind of know the way that Games Workshop operates on edition release cycles these days. For Warhammer 40k and Age of Sigmar ones, they seem to enjoy their 3 yearly edition release cycles. Start off with a big launch box, release a Codex, and usually at least 1 new miniature for each faction, and then finish off with an end edition campaign, whether it was the Gathering Storm one, the Psychic Awakening, or Arcs of Omen. I think you can certainly debate whether or not that's too fast for a 40k edition. A lot of people do seem to think it's a bit on the quick side, but I think it's hard to dispute it's been very successful for Games Workshop themselves. 40k has grown massively over the past few years. While you can always criticise lots about any individual one edition, they have learned a lot of lessons over that time. A lot more free digital rules, and they've gone from a game that was kind of unplayable competitively in early 8th edition with absolutely hilariously bad balance to something that's a fair bit more impressive now, at least in my opinion. In any case though, it does mean that leaving all the codexes kind of late into 10th isn't the best thing if we really are going to see a reboot of the game in 2026 as would be their schedule. Unless for some reason they decide to deviate from their normal release schedule and decide to make 10th edition a slightly longer lived one, maybe 4 years perhaps. We'd expect that 11th edition would be around June-July time at 2026, and unlike the jump between 9th and 10th edition, I think it's highly unlikely to be a full hard rules reset with all the codexes going away and making indexes again. I suspect you'd keep your codex going from 10th edition to 11th, and then more change the core rules and maybe issue a few more erratas to make sure everything is playable at launch. If that time schedule's right though, it means that if 11th releases then there's only around about 18 months left by the time we get to January 2025. That's really not all that much time to bring out around about 14 books or so, unless they keep up really quite a very fast pace of releases, particularly as you'd kind of want most of the books to be out by at least a year to go before the editions end. It looks like to be kind of inevitable that some will be in the annoying position of a codex 6 months before the new edition release, much like we had with Guard and World Eaters towards the end of 9th edition. I'll probably caveat that by saying that it's maybe not going to be as bad if the codexes come out and then you still use them in the future edition of the game, compared with if you use them for the tail end of 9th edition, then they basically become waste paper and you use indexes after that. Though it's still maybe not really the best having codexes not being playable very much for the edition that they're meant for. Taking a look at the release schedule of 9th edition, we only had 4 books after July 2022, so that'll be the equivalent of July 2025 for 10th edition. That's around about 1 year to go of the edition yet, and for 9th we had Demons, Votann, Guard and World Eaters. The Demons Codex not getting a big release wave or anything, but the Votann, Guard and World Eaters all got a release wave with them. I think quite often towards the tail end of an edition they do seem to keep armies with a release wave till last. I guess that's maybe a bit more of an excuse for their codex coming out a bit later. I suppose it means a lot of the negatives of having a book around for not so long is tempered a bit by at least getting some shiny new toys to go alongside it. Again though, if they are going to try and deliver something similar to that and maybe only have 4 codexes, towards the end of 10th edition they need to massively pick up the pace. I guess that'd be 10 armies in theory being released sometime between January and summer. Feels kind of possible, but that would be a very heavy release cycle. Early 2024 wasn't too bad for that. We had 7 codexes come out by July time, so I guess maybe it's possible in theory. I did notice on their release roadmap that said that something special was coming for Chaos as the hint for summer. It could just be Emperor's Children and Fulgrim a bit earlier than I might have guessed, or sort of wonder whether it could be some sort of big enormous joint release for Thousand Sons, Death Guard and World Eaters and do all the Deity Chaos Legions at the same time. That will be a pretty huge release if so. And I guess might fit with that very unconfirmed rumour that they might be putting Chaos Demons into those. On the flip side though, if they treat Primarch releases like they did back in 9th edition with Angron vs the Lion for the end edition campaign, I sort of expect Lehman Russ and Fulgrim to likely turn up towards the end of 10th, and if that was the case I might expect the Emperor's Children and Space Wolves to come out last, all very much speculation on my part though, hard to know how they'll play it, and no confirmation that Russ is indeed coming next for the Loyalists, even if he does seem by far the most obvious choice. In any case though, hopefully they do manage to pick up the pace a bit. It does make me wonder why they didn't decide to do one or two of the armies that aren't getting a release wave in this gap that they've got coming up before Christmas. Talking of that gap though, I thought it would be interesting to just take a look at the things that we've got confirmed for that. It basically looks like there's 15 weekends worth of pre-orders for Games Workshop to fill by mid-December. They usually tend to pause releases for a couple of weeks around the Christmas holidays, or sometimes announce things before Christmas but say it's not going to be shipped until January. And then over that time they just do a few more announcements and things, and often show off some sort of moderately big release on Christmas Day. Even based on what they've shown so far though, we basically absolutely know that 3 of those 15 weekends will be something that's absolutely 40k relevant. And then depending on what they do with a whole bunch of other stuff, there could be something like another 0 to 4 or so, plus likely a game rules update and a bunch of other previews as to the stuff that's actually coming in January. First up, to get the obvious one out of the way, there will be the actual Blood Angels release, which is certainly a major release weekend for Warhammer 40k. It'll have the Codex individually, the new Combat Patrol and Sanguinary Guard, which I still suspect to be pretty popular, even if a lot of people aren't particularly happy about the lack of wings on them. Plus the new Sanguinor, Captain, Sanguinary Priest, Astrath and Lamarties individually, and also their upgrade sprue individually. I'm honestly not sure exactly when that will follow. The Taos Kroot Hunting Pack box set had really quite a big delay between that one coming out and the main launch of the Codex plus the Kroot kits individually after that. I guess probably somewhere between the next 2 to 6 weeks for us to hear about it on pre-order. I'd be a bit surprised if it was longer than that. We'll also get the Blood Angels points coming out after the Codex drops as well, unless they generously share them early. I suspect not though, given that the way they treat these launch box sales. The other major fully announced one will be Kill Team Hivestorm. Obviously this one's primarily focused on the actual Kill Team game, which to be honest I think could be kind of interesting for a bunch of people given that it's a new edition and everything. Plus the solo and co-op game modes have caught people's eye a bit, though even if you completely discount the actual Kill Team game from the equation, it's still basically a 40k release weekend, really quite a nice squad worth of Tempestus Aquilons and those fun new Vespid sculpts, plus they've got some rather nice ruined terrain that comes in the box set as well. I strongly suspect that this one will be pretty popular, hopefully they make a few more copies of it than they have with some previous Kill Team kits. It'll also come with a 40k rules update, 4 new datasheets for both the squads as well, as neither of them really map perfectly with pre-existing options. I'd guess that the Aquilons will have some sort of bonus for their grav shoots deep striking in. My guess for how this one will come out will be that there'll be a single big box weekend with a follow-up with individual kill teams, rulebooks and terrain sets all individually afterwards. So I guess that's 2 releases worth of things that could be used for Warhammer 40k. They're only applicable to a couple of armies and a terrain set of course. Otherwise for 40k stuff we are actually waiting on perhaps a surprising amount of individual kit releases at this point. Lots of kill team kits coming out individually and 5 40k characters, plus some interesting stuff for Malstrain Gene Stealers. Besides the last bits, they've all been released in big bundle box sets so far but have not come out on their own. For the kill teams there's some really popular ones there: Night Lords, Drukari Mandrakes, Votan Jaegirs and Gene Stealer Cult Brew Brothers. All of those have been delayed a surprisingly long time, and I'd guess maybe that with a new edition of Kill Team they might be just holding off on them to have them packaged with the new Kill Team edition and any changes that brings. I believe they were talking about reboxing and putting QR codes of the rules in with them, so I'd guess that they'll only drop after the big box launch of the new Kill Team set, and then probably in that second weekend where we get things come out individually. That has been a bit of an annoying time for people who want those kits but didn't go for the big box as it had stuff in that they didn't want. The Mandrakes and Jaegirs are both really interesting infiltrating options for their respective armies, and the Night Lords I thought were a really good example of an upgrade sprue done well, a nice themed legionary kit, and one with loads of spare bits that you could use to embellish the rest of an army if you wanted to. Otherwise for the 40k characters we've got the Chaos Lords on foot and jump pack, the Benefactors from the Gene Stealer cult, the Jump Caroness and Inquisitor Kotias. Based on what they've done with previous releases, I'd guess they'd probably come out on the Blood Angels release weekend. They did a roundup of a few other characters dropping when the Gene Stealer cults and sisters came out, I believe. Again, it's been a bit of a wait for these if you didn't want to pick them up through the big box set. And to be fair, they could just have them all come out as a small release wave any one weekend. Though if I'd had to guess, I'd say it'd probably be with the main Blood Angels one. Finally, I thought I'd mention those Necromunda Forge World mouse train things. There's quite a lot of love for the sheer weirdness of the mouse train coalescence and the alpha. Could be useful for Gene Stealer cult players, though of course they'll be very expensive in Forge World resin. Otherwise, another absolutely guaranteed wave of 40k releases will be the Christmas Battleforces. Again, Games Workshop do have a pretty consistent pattern with this, usually 6 main 40k ones for armies that are either fairly popular or got biggish releases in fairly recent history. There usually tends to be a Space Marine one, but beyond that it can be a bit of a mix. These are the last ones that they had, and they basically all featured armies that had had fairly recent release waves and had a lot of at least reasonably recent models in them. The Guard having Rogue Dawns, the Tyranids having a Norn Emissary, and the World Eaters having Angron. They usually tend to be the last big release for 40k for the year, though I guess this is a year we've had more Battle Forces than just about any other, given that they've got into the habit of releasing one with each Codex too. They tend to get revealed in November and then go on for pre-order on or around Black Friday sort of weekend. I believe it was a bit earlier last time round, if memory serves. Judging by the releases that they've had this time around, I feel like maybe the single most likely one would probably be Dark Angels. I'm guessing we'll get a box of those featuring Lionel Johnson and some Inner Circle companions. Otherwise, I suppose Tau or Kroot might be odds on. I'd say probably some Kroot, some Tau in the box set, completely speculating. Almost certainly something Space Marine, but I'm not too sure what they'd go for beyond that. In any case, between the Blood Angels, Christmas Battle Forces, and 2 weekends worth of Kill Team stuff, should be pretty certain that we get at least something 40k relevant on 4 out of those 15 weekends. Otherwise, one thing that I mentioned in my initial reaction video to the roadmap is whether or not Guard will really be 2025, or whether this is, again, Games Workshop liking to talk about Codex releases when the book goes on sale individually and treating their launch boxes as just something that happens as a sort of preview a fair few weeks before. The thing that made me think of that straight away was the Cadia Stands box set. And again, that had an interesting sort of lead time on the release, where the launch box came out prior to Christmas, and then the actual rest of the Guard range with the Rogue Dawn alongside, that didn't materialise till January. If so, then it means that we could just really get the Guard Codex before Christmas, even if we don't get 4 releases and points after. I strongly suspect they'll do a launch box for basically a Krieg version of the Cadia Stands box with a whole bunch of new miniatures and whatever other good stuff they have coming for the Death Corps. Again, to look at their preview timetable here for the Cadia Stands set, that was previewed on the 8th of October 2022. Then that box set went for pre-order on the 12th of November, so shipping out in late November there. But the Codex didn't actually drop till January, so it sort of got a whole bunch of new Guard miniatures and the Guard book before Christmas 2022, when the actual Codex came out in 2023. There's no saying if that's actually what's going to be happening this time around, but at the very least it seems like a possibility, and will become even more likely if they do show off some new Death Corps around about the same sort of time in early October. Finally, and not really a Warhammer 40k release and such, but another thing on the horizon would be the next 40k balance update. Definitely something that could shake up the game a little bit and keep things interesting, hopefully bringing some love for a few of the slightly more struggling factions in the game. At least on pure tournament win rate potential, that'd be Orcs, Space Marines and Gene Stealer Cult in particular currently. Again, for this one, I think we can have at least an educated guess as to the timeframes for it. This year, the summer one came out a little bit early alongside the whole Pariah Nexus release. So far we've had 3 updates in 2024, late January, late April and late June. And if we assume the schedule was sort of meant to be late July rather than late June, we could maybe expect the next one at some time around October. So again, that could be something that shakes up the game in at least a little bit of a way, make a few standout things a little bit less auto-include, maybe try and improve some internal balance, and be yet another time to fail to make the big Chaos Knights particularly good in-game. This next update probably wouldn't be changing rules too much though. Judging by their normal calendar, it'll likely be a points-only one. They said in their past that their intention was to do a balanced data slate every other one. They usually tend to drop something fairly major in terms of updates towards late January, which I guess is when we'll see the next actual balanced data slate come out. In any case, let me know your thoughts as to the 40k gap. What do you make of the pace of Codex releases of 10th edition, and what are your hopes and expectations for what's coming out over the next few months? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments. As mentioned, a big thank you to Battle Kiwi for sponsoring the video with their rather fun battle box, and to finish up the video I'll just go through a few more of the features now. As mentioned, they're basically a 40k gaming organizer type thing. You can see on this one they've got a whole bunch of scoring dials there, things for tracking primary points, secondary points and command points each round. A transport section for a mission deck and display place for some mission cards, so you can have your 2 active secondary objectives on clear display as you can see here. And then storage stuff for dice, tokens, counters and tape measures and things, and it also comes with a dice tray as well. The idea of this one is that it's a 3D printed box that's been launched by Kickstarter this month. It's got an interlocking sliding tray sort of design, and the idea is that you make the layers that you want and you can print them out to your needs, only taking along the bits that you think are actually going to be useful to you. It's live on Kickstarter at the moment, and it looks like it's been really quite popular. $22, £17 or €19 for access to all the files, and hopefully could be useful enough to a few of you out there. Here's a closer look at the stacking tray sort of design. They clip into each other, and you can change up the order of them. The score sliders are down there on the bottom right with the primary and secondary objective and things. On the version on the bottom right, they've painted it in a cool sort of verdigris sort of colour, which is fun. It looks like it's been really quite popular on Kickstarter already. It's got almost 400 backers so far, so basically all the stretch goals have already been funded. So it comes with a bunch of extras as well, such as a dice tray, a data card tray, and a whole bunch of paint storage things and ruler storage too. They've also got a separate, more compact design as well, if you want something that's a little bit more slimmed down in space. In any case, feel free to check them out. A big thank you to Kiwi for sponsoring the video. Their links will be down in the video description. In any case though, an absolutely massive thank you for listening. What do you make of the 40k roadmap and the gap in it that we're getting until Christmas? Will Kill Team, Blood Angels Wave, Christmas Battleforces, and the small chance of some early guard be enough to fill that in your mind, or should they push things out a bit faster? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. Check out all the bits down in the video description. There's the channel's Patreon page for a few perks and rewards, and plenty of other stuff that helps support the channel. But in any case, an absolutely enormous thank you for listening, and I'll be hoping to see you guys next time.